is Ranking Member Eddie Bernice Johnson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good morning. I want to join Chairman Hall in welcoming all of our witnesses to today's hearing. And in addition, I'd like to express my appreciation in particular to one of the witnesses, Lieutenant General Thomas Stafford, for his decades of service to this country and his continuing effort to strengthen and promote the nation's civil and military aerospace capabilities. As this committee attempts to better understand the needs of our civil space program in these times of fiscal pressures, it is important to take a close look at one of the most important elements of the nation's human space flight program, namely the International Space Station. While the road to its completion has been a long one with many twists and turns along the way, the space station stands as one of the engineering marvels of the modern age and a testament to American ingenuity and perseverance. There's a lot one could say about the International Space Station, but I think the citation that accompanied the award of the ISS team of 2009 Collier Trophy, one of the aerospace profession's premier awards, sums up what has been accomplished, and that is the design, development, and assembly in space of the world's largest spacecraft, and orbiting laboratory promising new discoveries for mankind, and setting new standards for international cooperation in space. I would go further and also note that it is an accomplishment that has had great inspirational value for our young people, as evidenced by the intense interest of our students in taking to the orbiting astronauts and in developing science projects that might fly on the station. However, while we can talk about the promise offered by ISS in enabling future space exploration as well as carrying out basic and applied research that can benefit life here on Earth, its success in fulfilling that promise is not assured. We will only realize its promise if NASA and Congress ensure that the necessary steps are taken to make the ISS a productive research facility and technology test bed, and that is what we need to address at today's hearing. I understand the importance of trying to maintain uninterrupted access to ISS, and I know that we will hear testimony today on some of the challenges in doing so. However, we should not forget that the purpose of cargo and crew transportation systems is to support the utilization of the space station, not as ends within themselves. The reality is that the ISS is perishable commodity, and the future is really now in terms of utilizing this unique facility. While some may hope to extend its agreed-upon service life past 2020, we need to make sure that the 8 years that remain till the current end of the space station program are used effectively to answer the research and engineering questions that only can be answered by them. In short, we need clear, prioritized, and integrated utilization plans from NASA, and we need to be assured that these plans are being carried out, both by NASA and the Independent International Space Station Research Management Association, CASAS, that was set up for that purpose. The former director of CASAS raised a number of serious concerns in her recent resignation letter, and this committee will need to better understand what the situation is, given the important role in the International Space Station utilization. As a result, Mr. Chairman, I hope that this committee will convene another hearing before this session of Congress is over to examine all of the issues faced by the research community in trying to utilize the space station, as well as carrying out related ground-based research and development. We need to hear from the representatives of that community in addition to the testimony we will get from our distinguished panel testifying for us today. Before I close, I'd just like to make one more point. Namely, if we want to ensure that the space station carries out the needed research and technology activities in a timely and productive fashion, we have to be willing to make the needed investments. The research budget is stagnating, and the agency's life and microgravity research budget has been cut deeply over the past decade. That does not seem to me to be the formula to success. I am afraid that we get dumb from the continued chipping away, get numb, probably dumb too, chipping away of NASA's accounts by both Congress and the administrations. However, those continued cuts have had a negative impact on NASA's ability to carry out its missions that we should not ignore. And in spite of those negative impacts, the budget resolution that we will be voting on later this week would make additional cuts to the account that funds NASA and other R&D agencies. I hope that this Congress thinks twice before we embrace such cuts to an agency that is so important as NASA. In closing, I again want to welcome our witnesses and look forward to the testimony, and I yield back the balance of time that I don't have.
For
Thank
7 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Fair is fair.
Mr. Gerstenmaier, we're all aware that the first few years in the International Space Station was actually spent assembling it, and long before we could begin the research. But once the research was initiated and is ongoing, where is the focus now in the research?
ISS is a very diverse research facility. There's a alpha magnetic spectrometer that's on the outside of space station that actually looks for antimatter and dark matter from the universe, looking potentially how the universe was formed. There's also some Earth observation equipment on board. The HICO RAIDS instrument is a hyperspectral instrument that's looking at the ocean, looking at waves. There's some experiments being done now on combustion on board space station. We recently did some things looking at combustion stability in space. The advantage of looking at it in space is without gravity, the researchers can actually model the phenomena. So then when they look at more efficient gas turbine engines or more efficient automobile engines, they can take the knowledge that they gained on how the combustion actually works in low gravity, apply that here to the Earth. There's a lot of medical investigations going on board space station that deal with activities that can help us here on the Earth, things that help the elderly with bone loss, stability issues that astronauts face can also be investigated on space station. So it's a wide variety of research. There's probably 5 to 6 or so investigations every day being done uniquely on board the space station each and every day as we're in this next phase.
What do you think that will bring the breakthrough between now and 2020?
Again, I think the advantage of the space station is the fact that the crews have a long period of time to work on the investigations. In other words, they're not scripted that they have to complete an investigation immediately in a certain amount of time. They can do research much like we would do on a research lab here on the Earth. So if the astronauts see a unique phenomena that occurs in space that the researchers didn't expect to see, they have time to now investigate that research, and they may discover new phenomena or new things that never really existed. You know, we're learning a lot about how biological samples behave in space, how bacteria become stronger, how viruses become stronger. We can use that information to essentially build vaccines potentially for us here on the Earth. So I think the advantage of space station is the uniqueness of being able to take time to really do research and be creative in the way you do research and not be on a structured timeline that limits the amount of knowledge that you can gain.
Thank you. But there is a kind of a timeline that we are working against. And I have some real concern in the vaccines as well as viruses. Do you feel you're closer to any kind of breakthroughs?
We've done research on salmonella, and we've been able to develop essentially a strain of salmonella that's strong enough to cause the immune system to react, but not strong enough to give you the disease. So that's essentially a vaccine. That's about ready to go into FDA trials. There's been a lot of work working with the FDA to get it into trials, but we were able to use a small organism to get through the first phases of the FDA process, and then potentially it could go into FDA trials fairly soon. So the unique property that occurs with Salmonella vaccine occurs with viruses and other things as well, so we could potentially explore developing new vaccines for viruses and other things as well on board space station. So it gives a whole new research avenue for companies and pharmaceutical companies to pursue in space.
Thank you. Ms. Chaplin, how can Congress determine whether NASA is on track to meet the objectives by 2020?
Major projects at NASA regularly report data to the committees on cost, schedule, performance, and status. These projects, I don't believe, are among those, and that's one key way you could be asking for data to follow progress in addition to these hearings. That data comes in semi-yearly cycles and yearly cycles, so it might not be as timely as needed. We have ourselves an ongoing assessment of all major projects within NASA, and we do plan to include these efforts next year to help the Congress have more insight and oversight as well.
Feeling the pressure of 2020 approaching, does that add anxiety or add any more effort to reaching some conclusions, or how do you internalize that date for research or time?
In terms of overseeing the commercial development efforts, or in terms of research for the station? We have not revisited our previous work in terms of assessing how the station is being used for research. We made a recommendation when we did our review that they establish an organization to manage the research and prioritize it and ensure it's not duplicative. That's just getting underway, so the next year or so is really going to be critical to see how effective that mechanism is, and is it going to be the best to optimize the space station's research.
Mm-hmm. With the, and this could be unfair, but with the direction of this administration and where it appears to be headed with less and less and less and less financial support, does that affect performance or direction or planning?
It could possibly. I've seen in several agency budgets that money for S&T types of activities, research activities, are being cut, and it could affect plans that some agencies have had to use the ISS for their own research activities.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Chair.